Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and this is Pro Cycling Manager 2019. It's a tutorial on the Pro Cyclist mode. That is this mode right here, and when you set it up, I use the World Database. You can find this one on Steam. It's number one on their list. You can also find it on other numerous sites like pcmdaily.com. I'll go ahead and load up a game from there. Now, when you are selecting your rider, the height, the weight, none of that really has any sort of impact on your rider. The region is the only thing that will have a minor impact on what happens. And that being said, it has to do with what nation you're riding for your national races throughout the course. So if you're looking for a national championship jersey, it's going to be which nation you end up choosing here. Now I'll just take USA by default because that's what I am. But the height and the weight really makes no difference, nor does the appearance. So I'm going to go ahead and go into next. This is where it's going to have an impact. Though I will tell you right away, though, this is something that is interchangeable. Just because you select this at the beginning, you are not locked into it on a permanent basis. Your training is of your choice. Your training is by design your choice. And every level that you level up, you're going to have some options. And it's actually best to look through those options instead of just taking the default, whatever your main axis. So they give you a choice of a primary and a secondary axis. This is going to give you your specialty within your rider. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you about this. Your choices, you can see that there are 7 of them. Some of these, if you're new to the game, you're going to want to stay away from. And some of these you'll want to go for. Now, I would recommend staying away from time trial, at least as a main axis. I recommend staying away from Baradur as a main axis. The main choices that most people would opt for. Stage races is kind of the top dog, and a lot of people would start with this one, and if you've never played and you're not familiar, I would actually recommend going with stage races. Because ultimately, these are the big names in the sport. These are the ones competing for the Tour de France, and if that's all you're familiar with, then you probably want to win the Tour de France. And if that's your target, you need a stage racer as your main axis. This is somebody who's going to do races that are day by day by day by day, so a race over many stages, and they're going to be a varying type. They're going to have sprints, they're going to have climbs, they're going to have time trials, and there's that time trial part coming back at us. So there's going to be climbing, there's going to be a lot of things involved in doing that. A stage racer is somebody who's going to be good at climbing, they're going to be good on the time trial, they're going to be good in downhill acceleration, but especially resistance recovery. Those areas are going to be really important for them to compete over many days. One possible area that you could really go for is climber or puncher, depending on what you want to do with those two. But again, those are kind of a secondary to the stage racer or a secondary to something else. So being a climber or puncher wouldn't necessarily be a main axis, but would probably be a really good secondary axis choice, just as time trial could be a good secondary axis. One possible main axis choice besides stage races that a lot of people would go for, and I'd say there's probably 3 in all that are going to be your best options as a main axis, stage racing being one. A second is being a sprinter. So this is your Mark Cavendish, Dylan Groenewegen, Elia Viviani. These are the guys that are going to go for a very, very high rate of speed to the finish line to win a stage. So competing for stage victory after stage victory after stage victory, going for green points jerseys. That's a sprinter's role. And it's an exciting one to do. So going as a sprinter is definitely one of those top choices. But I would not couple it with something like stage racing or climbing or time trials. That they really don't mix. The other primary choice that is out there, done a little less often, it's more of a specialty preferred by a minority out there, but it is strongly preferred within that minority community. That being Northern Classics. Now, the Northern Classics, as in Northern Continental Europe, mainland Europe, the Dutch, the Belgian races in particular, fit the profile of these Northern Classics. There's essentially two types of Northern Classics for the most part. You have cobbled classics, as in cobblestone, as in you're, instead of on smooth pavement, you're on bumpy stone, racing on that terrain. And the best example of a Northern Classic of that variety is Paris-Roubaix. The other type being more the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is a lot of short, steep climbs over and over again. So what is considered a punchy. So a puncher would fit into that type of Northern Classic. So combination there. A good addition to a Northern Classic's main axis would be a puncher secondary axis, or maybe a climber secondary axis, or a sprinter secondary axis. Those are kind of your three main echelons, three main choices that you would want to go with if you are new to the game, if you're new to Pro Cyclist mode. Yeah, with that being said, the last selection is the potential. The standard, the default is Grand Champion. You do have quite a few good choices here, from very good up to that Grand Champion. They have a small impact on the game. But the default Grand Champion, most people are going to end up leaving that as Grand Champion. And for this, I'm going to have some numerical values to give you throughout this. And they are tied to Grand Champion, which is what the majority of people will play as. If you get into one of the other options, just kind of note that it would alter some of the numbers that are going to come up on this one. Once you go from there, though, you're going to have a choice of team, and they're going to give you 3 teams as a choice. Now, some of that is going to come down to the nation that you selected, so they're going to try to give you a home team, and then others are going to be random. But you can see the biggest thing that we're going to keep an eye on in this team selection is what division that they are in. You have Continental Pro, or World Tour. You're not going to get a World Tour offer starting out as a 19-year-old racer just getting their career started. You're going to have to work your way up. And that's one of the fun parts about the Pro Cyclist mode, is you go from team to team, and the game is going to follow your trajectory, your growth, your career. Continental Pro is the middle level in between the World Tour and Continental, which means if you were to take Rally as your initial team, you're going to start out competing at a higher level. You're going to be among better riders. In this case, 17 riders on the team, you would be the 14th best, meaning you would just about be the worst rider on the team day one. Not a very good place to be. Which means you would spend a really long time working for the team, working your way up into something, which means your playthrough is going to have a slower pace. It's not going to be as fun for you doing that. But you're going to start at a higher level. So, yay, bigger name races. There's a trade-off. I would strongly recommend beginning your career with a Continental team. Doesn't necessarily matter which team you start with, but there are a couple things that you would want to watch out for. One, the type of race. Now, if you know the sport and you know what we were just talking about with, like, say, Northern Classics, if you join a Dutch Continental team, they're probably going to specialize in Northern Classics. If you join a Colombian team, they're probably going to specialize in climbing. Now, if you fit that profile, if you fit that bill, you're going to get a lot of races that fit your style, which could be a good thing. It also could mean that you're one of many, and so that there's a lot of trade-offs. There's a lot of things you just kind of need to keep your eye on. A lot of that's going to come down to knowing and understanding your role and knowing the breakdown of what nations are good at what nations generally specialize in what, and that's more of an advanced knowledge of the game. And well, we're not really there if you're new to the game. If you're new to Pro Cyclist mode, chances are you're going to want to more likely just kind of go with your home nation. So in this case, the Arapaho Hincapie team is a good choice for me, and here's why. One, it's a small team. I would already be the 4th best rider on the team. Now, it's a low-level team, so there's some downsides to that. But here's a couple good things. One, I'm already the 2nd best of stage racing, the best climber, the 2nd best time trialist, right off the bat, which is going to give me some options. So I'm going to go ahead and take this team. The game's always going to start you January 1st. And before you move forward and hit continue, there's going to be some things you're going to want to take care of right away. There's a lot of day one decisions that need to be made, whether it's career mode or Pro Cyclist mode. So very important thing to note. The first thing that pops up in your message filters is, of course, a welcome to the team. But that's nothing but a welcome, so there's not much to it. But the big one is your preseason settings. They want you to choose your preparation level. And I will tell you right off the bat, this one is an automatic. So we're going to jump into season objectives. And we're going to take a look at when we want these objectives to be. Now, this one could be a little tricky and actually could be a pretty complex thing. There can be a very advanced way of doing this. But the big thing is there's a preseason selection up here. Automatically, without a doubt, you need to take the highest level. Go to very high. No other choice. No other choice makes any sense whatsoever in the way this game is set up, unless you're going for ultra realism. These choices from here, they are broken down by splitting the season into 3 parts. The season goes from January to October, by the way, and with no races in November and December. That's kind of the rest time in between the year. These choices can make a real difference for one thing and one thing only in this year's game: fitness peak. And it's important. So it is something that deserves attention, and you deserve to select the right one. And at the same time, you deserve to select the wrong one. I have a tutorial on fitness. Be sure to check that one out to figure out how to determine the right selection for your objectives. So training and fitness, check out that tutorial. I'll leave a link down in the description below to that tutorial. I'm not going to get into that one here. And I'm not going to bother with changing them on this occasion. Get that pre-season selection set to that 90 to 95, very high, the highest setting you can do, and then accept that before you go forward a day. From there, let's go ahead and push forward that one day, and then we will kind of roll into your options from there. Now, once it brings you forward, all of these things that were unselectable before are going to be an option. And you can see that I'm already jumping into a fitness peak, and that was down to that objective being set in January. With it being in January, I'm already rolling towards a fitness peak. But you can see my fitness level already 95%. That pre-selection we just made would put you somewhere between 90 and 95%. And you want to start with a high level of fitness. Here's why. We're going to go to the training page, And this is the really important one to manage. Now, this is going to be broken down a little bit more in that same tutorial on training. But here's a quick breakdown. So you could keep this above 90% all season long. In the past, and you could see it a little bit here, the default one, you could see troughs. You could see rises and falls as you go through these fitness periods throughout the season, and you're targeting a high point. You're targeting your highest level of fitness with a fitness peak at the right points in the season. You only get 3 fitness peaks in a season, so it's kind of tricky. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to adjust your training schedule for the entirety of the season. Now, if you change your schedule, this is going to have to be readjusted. Initially, and we'll look at the calendar real quick before we come back into that, you have races that you are involved in. Check mark means you are signed up for that race, and you can see an overview of which ones you're signed up for here on the calendar. Can't be in 2 places at once. You can only do 1 race at a time. The more you race, the more tired you're going to get. And you've got to manage that fatigue. So you can't do every race. Likewise, the team has given me 15 points to adjust the calendar. And that's what this cost section is for. So if I wanted to add the International Roads Grand Prix, which is a sprint race and I'm not a sprinter, I wouldn't want to add that. But if I did want to add that for some reason, let's say I was a sprinter, it would cost me 3 of those 15 points to add it. And you would do so by clicking on the plus. You could take races away with the minus, but that's going to cost you as well. There will come a time as a World Tour rider where I'm going to adjust my calendar. There's a time as a World Tour rider that I want to participate in all 3 Grand Tours. And I will sign myself up for those. So I will unsign for certain things and sign myself up for those. I will adjust my calendar to fit my goals for the season, my objectives for the season. For me personally, I don't mess with it hardly at all in the Continental season. Now, if I'm on a team that struggles to put me on the right races because of the way their calendar is built, yeah, I might delete 1 or 2 races and I might add 1 or 2 races that really, really fit my profile that I've got a chance at doing well at. Especially the first season, maybe I'll throw myself into a youth race that I know I could be successful at. Like, say I'm good at climbing, I would take a youth race that has some mountain stages and potentially go off and earn a lot of points towards leveling up. We'll get to that in a second. But it could be very useful to get yourself into the right races. So I'm not saying don't do this, because there is value. But if you are going to do this, if you are going to make changes, make them right away. Make them on January 2nd. And then do this next part a day later on January 3rd after those adjustments have been made. Because here's why. Let's go back to training. Now, let's say I've already made my adjustments. We'll say it's January 3rd, or I chose not to make any adjustments. So my calendar is now locked in. Here's why this matters. Okay? These races affect your fatigue. They affect your fitness level. They affect your training. All of it. It is part of what we're about to do here to keep you at or above high 90s in the fitness level all season long and keep you from getting tired. Freshness is something that recovers day after day and not such a big deal. Fitness peak can be a pretty big deal, but it's a whole nother matter. And again, check out that tutorial to figure out how the fitness peak works. But we want to keep a high level of fitness, and we do not want to get tired. If you get tired, it's going to have a negative effect. If you have a high fitness level, it's going to have a positive effect. And you can keep that all year long. So you can have a positive without the negative all year long if you manage this correctly. Best way to do it? set that 90 to 95% for the preseason, and then you're already locked in at a high level. And then you want to make every single week either hard training or no training at all. Like this. And you can see just by taking 1 week break, I take away a whole bunch of fatigue for the entire season. But I also took away a whole bunch of fitness level without training. Alright, so here's a quick glance at what we have. See, by hard training these next few weeks, I get up to 100% level of fitness. But then we go into this race. And by the end of that, plus another day, 1 day of hard training at the end of the week, we get to the point where we are slightly tired. We don't want that. So I'm going to take a week this break and make that go away. Now, if I go back to hard training the next week, we're slightly tired again. Why? Because really all we did was take 1 day off. Because we raced the rest of the week. That's why it's important to have your schedule figured out already. In particular, because let's say this was scheduled as a break week, and then we schedule this race, and then we only end up with 1 day off. Throws off our entire schedule. So we do need to take another break here. Now, lowering this, see, it doesn't really make much of a difference. Light training, medium training, hard training, we're still getting fatigued. And that's why on or off works so much better, hard or break. Now, it does lower our fitness level a little bit, but hey, 98% is really good. So we're going to go from there, and we're going to train hard, and we're going to train hard, and we're going to train hard. Oh, but there's a little bit of fatigue showing up, so let it go down. Now, here's the tricky part. The more you race, the harder it is to manage this. So what we end up with here is a situation where, in order to not have fatigue, we've got issues. But what if we go like this? That's still kind of iffy, right? Because we have fatigue and we don't know it's going to be gone by here. It's usually reset week by week. So take that one, and that's going to drop us down a little bit lower than we want because that's 2 breaks in a relatively short period of time. But this is something that's going to come up in a little bit. So you would do that for the whole season, and you can manage that. It gets easier and easier with something that'll happen in the near future, and that is leveling up. Keep a high level of fitness throughout the season. Keep the fatigue away. Super important. Incredibly important to how you do your playthrough. Here's a quick look at how Fitness Peak works in Pro Cyclist mode. It works the same in career mode with kind of one key difference. But Fitness Peak is something based on 100 points. It's a 100 point scale. Once you hit 100 points, you begin your Fitness Peak. Without any upgrades, a Fitness Peak is something that lasts between 12 and 18 days, giving you a boost to your race day condition, giving you a boost to your attributes, making you a better rider for a short period of time. 100 points is what it takes to get there. Now, the way you get to those 100 points is there's a natural progression, and then there's a piece that you affect. The natural progression is training points per day. As soon as you are 8 weeks out from an upcoming objective, this unlocks. It doesn't unlock before that. It used to be different in 2018 and earlier. So, as soon as you hit 8 weeks prior to the objective, it's going to unlock, and then you gain, here it says 2.3 points per day. That's rounded up. It is actually 2.25. So, for every 4 days, you're going to gain 9 points. Now, at that rate, it will take 45 days if you do nothing but training. 2.25 points, and that is on Grand Champion. This was something I was talking about a little bit earlier in the video. So on Grand Champion, you gain 2.25 points per day. That is 45 days to get 100 points without any racing whatsoever, without anything else affecting this. the unlock is 56 days before the objective hits. Meaning, no matter what you do, if you're on Grand Champion, you're going to hit that objective 11 days early. And your fitness peak only lasts 12 to 18 days. Meaning, you're going to be on the final day or the final week of that fitness peak by time you start your objective. So the first thing that I recommend is don't actually make your objective the objective you want. If your objective starts on the 1st of March, I recommend choosing a different objective that starts 2 to 3 weeks later than the, 1st of March? So something that starts in the middle to back end of March, so that your fitness peak will actually hit when it's supposed to. Because no matter what you do, if you're on Grand Champion potential with 2.25 points per day, you are going to hit that fitness peak no less than 11 days early. Now I say no less because it can get even earlier. I'm going to assume that your rider has not been injured and is not sitting out during this time. Therefore, they're going to accumulate training points, and therefore they're going to be eligible to participate in races. And you're not going to just race the Tour de France this year, right? Well, if you are, then the math is really easy. But if you are going to get involved in racing, well, racing accumulates even more points. Not much more, though. 2.25 for training. Now, by training, I mean all forms of training. If you have break, if you have light, medium, or heavy training, it's all the same. Makes no difference. 2.25 points per day. Every day that you do not race. The alternative is race. That's it. Racing or not racing. Not racing, 2.25. Racing, 3. 3.0. 3 even, flat. 3 points for every day that you race. So it's more than what you get for a training day by 0.75. And that adds up in a very nice, clean way. If you multiply 0.75 by 3, you get 2.25. So for every 3 days of racing, you're going to hit that fitness peak 1 day sooner. Which means if you race 9 days during that 8-week period prior to the objective, you're going to add 3 days, or shave off 3 days in hitting that fitness peak, which means you're going to be exactly 2 weeks ahead of time. See where I'm going with this? So if you race 9 days, doesn't matter whether it's stage races or classics, count the number of days that you will be riding. Doesn't matter the type of stage, type of race, doesn't matter whether it's 4Ks or 270Ks. For each day of racing, 3 points, same, regardless. So, 9 days of racing equals 2 weeks ahead of time. 20 days is 2.5 weeks. 30 days is 3 weeks. So those give you kind of an idea. But you're looking at a window where you're probably going to be somewhere between that 9 days and 30 days of racing over the 2-month period leading up to a race. I would imagine you'll be somewhere in there. So generally speaking, if you're on Grand Champion anyway, you'll want to set your objective to something that's 2 or 3 weeks after what you actually want it to be. And generally speaking, 2 weeks is going to be a pretty safe target on that, especially once you start putting some levels into your fitness peak in your skills section. We'll get to that part here in a moment. So the objective here in my very first race is telling me that I'm a barrador, and the objective is get some exposure during a breakaway over at least 130 kilometers, which which means I need to get into a breakaway. The breakaway is the group off the front. Holy cow, I'm a huge rider. Alright, so what I need to do is I need to get off the front. So I'm going to hit sprint here, and you can see that I'm actually really super slow in the sprint. Really slow. You can see that I'm just a 55 in the sprint, so it makes total sense, and I'm actually slow in the flat as well, so that's not helping. But we'll go ahead and move on. Really doesn't matter what size I am in this game, though it does matter in real life on how you're set to be. But yeah, you can see how much bigger I am than everyone around me, so it looks funny. Anyway, here's how you could tell what to do within the break. And by the way, I have 4 teammates in the breakaway of 18 riders. So, one, you're going to have group cooperation, and I'm not going to go into detail on how to ride in a breakaway. I do have a race basics tutorial. I'll leave a link for that one as well below, and how to ride. But we've already been caught, and so I'm going to go ahead and sprint again, try to get off the front here. Just for the sake, I'm not worried about my energy, because I'm not even thinking I'm going to end up finishing this stage, actually. But here's how you could tell what you're doing within your objective. Spacebar will pull up your what do you call these things? It'll pull up this screen anyway. Choose the race strategy tab. This logbook of sorts. Anyway, it'll tell you again what your role is, what the objective itself is, but it's also going to give you feedback on whether you're accomplishing your goal or not. And you can see that it says 130k as the target, and every kilometer that passes and I'm in a break, you can see this box is actually ticking up. So as I ride through in the stage, as I ride through in the group, and I'm just going to start speeding things up here as our group comes together. That's 6 riders now. So 12 kilometers, and I'm into the group, and we just want to ride along. Now, early on in the game, meeting these objectives is massively important. And you can't sim the races in order to do this. So you are going to have to race through them. It's going to give you objectives like this. It's going to give you objectives to work at the front of a group. Okay, when the objective is to work at the front of the group, you're going to have... You want to have at least one teammate in the group. Doesn't matter whether you're in the break. Doesn't matter whether you're in the peloton, which is the P. By the way, here's a tracker. Every time you get 25%, it's going to tell you. You don't have to wait just for that. Again, check this screen anytime to see how you're doing and whether you're actually getting credit or not. But what you need, okay, is you really need to hit these goals. And if they want you working at the front as a teammate, okay, the job is to relay with others in the group. Usually this works best in the peloton, but sometimes it can work in a group off the back. They are sprinting for sprint points here. Got dropped a little bit. Need to make sure I catch back up here. And there we go, back into the group. So we continue on 52k now. If they want you working on the front, make sure you've got somebody in your group, and then you're going to choose relay. And if you are not actually at the front of the group, like see where I am now, let me bring it back in. See how I'm actually at the back, and I keep shuffling back to the back, and as they take turns, they actually pull up in front of me. It's because I am not giving enough effort. I need to be between an 80 and a 90 effort to actually be contributing. I'm at a 64. They're not going fast enough to drop me, but they are going fast enough that I'm not getting enough. So I increase the effort, and that's going to allow me to actually take a turn. Now, when you are supposed to be working at the front as a teammate, that 1 kilometer that I was just at the front, that's all you get credit for if you're working as a teammate. So if others are working and not you, no credit. My recommendation is if it tells you to work at the front for 40k, Go to the front, stay at the front. And here's how best to do that. Put your effort level just above whatever the happy zone is, where you are working just that little bit harder and nobody else wants to work that hard, so you take turns. And nobody else does. And so you just stay up front. But you're not working crazy hard where you're going to fall over dead halfway through the stage because you burnt all your energy out. The best way to do that, and generally, it's somewhere in the high 60s or low 70s is enough for that. Depends on the race. Okay. Generally speaking, a 68, a 69, or a 70 is enough to do that, and also enough to not totally burn yourself out. So if you find a 67 has other guys taking turn it up a hair. Turn it up to a 68. If that does the trick, then you're good. If not, turn it up another notch. Turn it up another notch. Get to 70. If that's working and you're staying on the front and nobody else is coming front, then you are doing the job necessary to collect the kilometers you need to meet your objective. And you can see I'm about to meet my objective here. Now, the whole point of meeting the objective is to make your boss happy. And when you make your boss happy, you get leveling up points. Okay, back into the peloton here. Did I meet my objective? I'm 2 kilometers away. I need 2K to get my objective. I want it. So I'm going to go forward into this group and try to get in there for, 2K. There's 129. And there's 130. Objective met. Now, here's the thing about the objectives. That red bar that just popped up, the 25, 50, 75, 100 bar, it's tied to that. If you get 25% of the bar, it's going to be a poor evaluation, but at least it's not a total failure. 50% is going to look a little bit better. 75% is going to give you a decent evaluation on the day, on your role, on your task. Boss is going to look at that and go, yeah, you did all right for the day. 100% is going to look good. It's going to give you a good evaluation. You're going to get more points to level up. You can do a little math, push it to 125%, and get the highest evaluation you could possibly get, which is excellent, and it's going to give you a little bit more points. So if I were to break off the front right now, what I would need is I need another 25%. Take whatever the total is, do the math how you want to do it, but take 130K, multiply it by 1.25, and it'll tell you what the total is. Or, in your head, break it down to a quarter and add that on. That's how much extra you need. In this case, half is 65, right? Half of that is going to be 32 and a half. Round that number up an extra 33 kilometers off the front, meaning if I get to 163, I would have an excellent evaluation. It's a little late for that now. They're not going to let me get that far out there with just 37K to go. So my day is essentially done on this one, and I'm just going to go times 8 and finish the stage up here and not bother with anything. But we'll talk through it. So the higher your level of checkboxes, if you get 128 out of 130 where I was sitting and don't get back into that group, you're locked in at that 75% eval. So when you're super, super close, sometimes you want to fight a little bit more to do something to try to make it happen. Looks like I'm about to fall out of the back of the group after working in the breakaway all day. But there you go. Just about made it there anyway. So, work for the team. Now, when you get those little pop-ups that tell you, hey, don't leave me out in the cold, protect me, all of that kind of stuff, none of that actually matters. At least not in the game mechanics. They'll tell you messages, and if you want to role play, play. But that little screen, that little pop-up, that objective, that's what you need to accomplish, not the other stuff. Okay, I pick up a bunch of bonus points for being in a breakaway. And I get a very good evaluation because I topped 130K, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Here's what they actually evaluated me on, and I met the goal. I got very good. Excellent would have been that extra 33K. And again, always round up on a half number when that comes down to it, and that's what you would need. So 33K more, 163. It's never going to tell you that number, but that's where you get to excellent instead of very good. That's going to make your manager happy. That's going to eventually give you leader roles. Boss has got to be happy before they're going to make you a leader. That's also what's going to level you up. 1 point away, of course. I was really wanting to get into that next part. So I'll have to skip forward to make that next part happen. I'll see you in a moment when we level up, and we'll go over what to do for there. But by the way, we did hit our fitness peak heading into this week. And there you see it lasts for 12 to 18 days. At the turn of every month, you're going to automatically get points. Now this one does depend on what level you chose. If you chose Grand Champion, the default, you're going to get 50 points at the turn of every month, which gave us the 1 point plus an additional 49 to get us on our way towards level 2. Every time you level up, there's going to be a bonus. The leveling up is really important in the progression of your career. You're going to get skill points, and you're going to be able to improve your attributes. Now, not every level is going to work the same way. Every once in a while, you're not going to get an improvement of one type or the other, and sometimes it's going to unlock new race categories for you so that you can race in more prestigious races. But when you do get an increase in attribute ratings, you're going to get to choose what you're going to level up in. And this is that big thing. This one, you need to look through and see what it's going to do for you. There's also a way to change your potential as you go through and choose each of these. So it does change the range, but I usually just stay in the progression of attributes to see where my improvement is. Now this all depends on what you're aiming for. I chose a stage racing specialist at the beginning of this one, so if that was my selection, I'm going to want to be good in a few areas. I'm going to want to be really good in mountains. I want to be decent in hills. I'm going to want to be really good in time trial and decent in prologue. I'm going to want to be fairly good at acceleration, fairly good at downhill, and I'm going to want to be fairly good at stamina. And then the other two that really matter are resistance and recovery. Now I have a breakdown, another tutorial. See, I've done quite a few tutorials for this PCM 19 by this point. I do have one that breaks down the rider attributes, what they mean, how they matter. So for those details, check that one out, and I suppose I'll leave a link for that one below as well. But those are what matter for a stage racer. Now, if you take a climber, a puncher, or a stage racer specialty, chances are it's going to give you options that kind of fit that mold. You can see through this one level, I'm going to gain 2 points in my mountain rating. This is your old rating. This is your new rating. I'd gain 4 points in hills. That's a big increase. 2 in time trial and prologue, 1 in sprint, 1 in downhill, and so on. That's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. In addition to that, though, I also got a skill point. And you see this yellow bar here. There's another way to get there from here, but you can just click on this, and it's going to take you to this new PCM 19 feature for the Pro Cyclist mode, a skill tree. Now, the skill tree is something that, well, it's complex, it's new, and certain things here have more value than others. So I'm going to spend just about the entirety of the rest of this tutorial going over the skill tree. Now, if you have been playing for a while and you already understand the skill tree, well, then you've probably reached the end of the value of this tutorial. However, if you're still trying to figure out the skill tree, I'm going to analyze everything in at least some detail as we go through and go over what has higher value than others. Eventually, there are 36 levels and there are 36 skill points. So with 36 attributes that can have skills applied, eventually you can take literally everything here. You can have it all. So in that sense, none of it's necessarily bad and none of it is unachievable. But when to apply those skill points, well, that's a whole nother matter. And there is better value in some of these sections of the skill tree, and there's less value in others. And there's no increased cost. So each of these skills, you can see it's broken down into 4 categories, but then it's broken down into 3 skills in each category. But each of them, like the fitness peak here, has 3 levels. The 3rd level costs 1 point. 2nd level costs 1 point. The 1st level costs 1 point. There's no changing value in each, and that makes it to where it doesn't punish you for filling one of these out before going on to others. In a lot of games, the further you go down a skill tree, the more expensive it gets to improve to a higher level. And therefore, often, a smart way to play might be to get level 1 everything, or most everything, before you really start working level 2, because that's going to cost you more. And likewise, kind of finishing off most of level 2 before you really get into level 3 because of the increased cost. There's no increased cost here. So you really can pick and choose where you want to go. Take all 3 levels if you want before moving on to the next one. Of course, you're going to have to level up 3 times here to get 3 skill points to finish off 1 skill. But looking at these, I will quickly tell you that Discovery has less value than the others. I love the feature of Discovery on here in Pro Cyclist mode, and I didn't go into it during the race, and I probably should have. But attributes are now hidden for other riders, unless they're a world-class rider that everybody knows. Like, in the race we were in, Elia Viviani was there. Viviani, his attributes were not hidden. Why? Because if you know cycling, and you're in the peloton, and you look over at Elia Viviani and you go, that's a sprinter. That's a world-class sprinter. Oh, there's Michael Matthews. There's a world-class sprinter. Peter Sagan. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm in the peloton with these guys. Well, I know what they're capable of. But who's this guy here? I don't know him so well. So when you first join the peloton, when you first join a team, you don't know your compatriots. You don't know the riders that you're with. This discovery section reveals that. So information, you break down that information, you get past that masking sooner, and you reveal the attributes. Observation is a good feature where late in the race, you know your own team and you know how much energy they have left, but what about the other riders? Well, the observation is more of, okay, you're riding next to Viviani and you're going up a mountain and you look over and he's huffing and puffing and he's struggling to get up that mountain. You watch him long enough and you're going to figure that, oh, he's about to get dropped. Well, that's kind of what the energy bar represents, right? So this observation allows you to observe and watch. And if you really watch him, if you use this option, this magnifying glass, then you're going to get that revealed. And you're going to see when he's about to run out of energy, so you can have your team attack and drop Viviani so that maybe you have a chance to win the sprint. It's nice to have these in the game, and I love that feature in the game. But these 3 are less valuable until you start getting down to the World Tour races, the Grand Tours, where you're going up against these guys, and you need to know everything about everyone, and you need to be able to observe them well. I think the observe one is a little more important than these 2, because eventually you're going to learn about all the riders anyway, over time. So if you could be patient, these could be just about the last 6 skill points that you're even going to bother spending. The observation sooner than those, but also later on. Now, here's some in-race kind of bonus ones that have some value, and more than the discovery, but less than some of the others still. So we're kind of breaking into a middle tier here. And they're new features that I have not played with yet myself because, well, they're middle tier. I haven't gotten to that point where I'm onto the middle tier of skill points with any of my Pro Cyclist modes. So this one, Technique, it allows you to stand out thanks to your understanding of your bike and the way you handle it. This is an in-race bonus on Technique that's going to give you a little bit of a boost, I think like on downhill, that sort of thing, where you're going to ride a little bit faster, a little bit smoother, maybe use a little bit less energy. Stealth. This allows you to attack, and other riders don't realize you're attacking right away. As in, you're able to kind of escape a little bit. You're able to get a couple 100 meters away. This is good if you are a puncher and you want to get off the front and attack. So it can go hand in hand with being a puncher and have value there. In a lot of other places, it's not going to matter as much. At least not until later when you're getting down to those finer details late game. This one, Super Leader. When you have the role of leader in a race, it enables a teammate to momentarily surpass himself for you. Meaning your riders, their energy is running low. They're going to hang on a little bit longer. They're going to fight a little bit harder. It's like giving them the energy gel, basically. It's like a bonus energy gel that you could apply to a rider. And I think that's ultimately what it would come down to, is my guess. Is in Pro Cyclist mode, the energy gel is hidden on every rider but yourself. So my guess is it's going to give that energy gel back to where you can choose when to apply it for the rest of the team. So if you're late on and you're trying to use a sprint train and you want them to attack and last a little bit longer or have an increased effort level a little bit longer, that's going to give that back to you. And it's going to get stronger and more effective with each level. Actually, it looks like it's more usable, right? There's up to 3 times. So you would be able to do that 3 times. So that's basically what that comes down to. So those in the right setting definitely could have value. Puncher, a leader, those 2 roles, right? That's going to come down. And this one's kind of tricky on when to use it. And until I've used it, it's hard to say too much about it. Now, personality. The charisma piece. This is influencing the team by receiving more points for changes. Remember how earlier we talked about how you have 15 points to change your race calendar? This just gives you more points. So if you really like to change your calendar, well, then this one has value for you. If you're going to let your calendar be, especially for the first couple of years of your career, charisma is completely unnecessary until later on. And then the ironic thing is the better you get as a rider, the more points you're going to end up getting anyway. And therefore, the less relevant this one becomes. So charisma could be literally the last thing you take unless you change your schedule frequently. I'm going to jump down to the last one, network. Network, well, by having more contacts of interest, have a greater impact on the agent's work in the spring when he is looking for a team. Now, I'm going to have to move forward a couple months in the calendar to get to that piece, and that'll be the last thing we talk about as soon as we're done with this skill tree, but that's setting up contracts. Now, network can be good and bad, and ultimately you begin searching for your next team or your next contract or retaining your services within the team you exist on. That process begins in April, and it happens on the first of each month for a handful of months until contract offers begin coming in August. That process, that networking, every month they give you 1 skill point. to apply. I shouldn't say skill point because this is your skill tree. They give you 1 point of interest point to apply to a team. Now, if you do your homework in the first place, come April 1st, look at the teams that are interested in you. That list is not going to change. It's a long list. Those teams are not going to be very interested in you, especially in your first season. And you want to grow that interest. If you know what team you would like to sign with the next season, whether it's the team you're on now, whether you just want to stay with them, or whether you want to move on to a new team. If you select that team right away in April, and you just use that bonus contact of interest every month on that one team, you don't necessarily need this network stat, but it'll certainly help you get a better contract offer, or be more certain that you will get a contract offer from that team. Otherwise, the network doesn't necessarily matter. Be slightly helpful. I think even just 1 level of it could be very helpful because you're doubling down at that point. You're getting 2 points instead of 1, and that can really make it easy to make sure that that team will sign with you. So 1 level of network is pretty decent. But after that, unless you're just not sure and you want to kind of play the field and see a few different teams and which one offers you the best contract and you care about that, and maybe that's your role-playing side of it, well, then more levels could matter. But yeah, I think network 1 level has good value, but that's it. The others don't matter so much. Now, here's the one that usually comes under debate the most: attentiveness. This gives you more XP each month. We just turned over to February 1st, and that's how we leveled up, and that's how we've got this skill point that's available to us. We picked up 50 points at the end of the month. So every month, your natural progression, if you're on Grand Champion, is 50 points. It's less if you're on the other tiers. But you get 50 every month regardless. Train, ride, out injured, whatever it is, you gain 50 points every month. For each level of attentiveness, you add 5 to that total. So level 1 becomes 55, 60, or 65 to level 3. Now, 3 levels. That's 3 skill points that you have to use to get to 65. And how does 65 compare to 50? Well, that's 15 points leveling up every month for your entire career. Now, in the long term, that adds up to being a lot. I mean, every year, we're looking at 130 extra points. Now, right now, that seems like a huge amount because, it's only 100 points to get to level 2. So that does seem like a lot. But in the long term, these levels get further and further and further and further apart. But 130 points a year, that's not a bad total. But if you only take 1 level, right, we're only looking at 60 points a year. Is that right? No. Yeah, 60 points a year. So it's got to be 180, isn't it? 15? It is. It's 180. Sorry, 180 points every year. Boy, simple math just went beyond me there for a moment. Anyway, 180 points a year. It's a decent amount of points. But here's the thing about attentiveness. If you wait till later in your career to take these 3 points, to take these 3 levels, that value goes down a lot. Let's say you have 1 year left in your career. You're only going to end up getting 180 points. And that's if you took all 3 at the exact same time, even. So the value of attentiveness depends on when you take it. Every month that goes by and you're not getting those extra points, that's a month you're not going to get that back. You're not going to get those points back. Ever. So, the longer you wait to take attentiveness, the lower the value of attentiveness is. if you want attentiveness, if you want the extra 5, 10, or 15 points every month, I recommend making attentiveness one of the first things that you take, one of the very, very first things you go for. Otherwise, it's going to just lose more and more value over time because you're never going to get back those points that you could have had earlier on with it. So if you want to level up faster, go for attentiveness and take all 3 levels as one of the first things you go for. Otherwise, don't bother. Make it the last thing you go for. Doesn't necessarily have to be first, but one of the first. All right. Now, finally on to the last 3, and these ones are ones you do want to go for early on. These are ones that have very high value, that have a huge impact. Now, the one that I find a little bit less valuable, I'll start with that, and that is willpower. Willpower is a few times in a season, turn the tide and reverse an expected negative race day condition. Now, this is the pre-selection part. Now, if you're taking care of your fitness, like we talked about, it's going to be rare that you'll even have a negative race day condition. But let's say it's a big stage and you're going for it, the weather's bad, and maybe you're sick or something like that, a couple things that are out of your control, and you have a -2 expected race day condition, well, we could flip that. It's a choice. It's a pre-race choice. It's something you could do. And you get 2 bonuses per season for level 1, 4 for level 2, 6 for level 3. The tricky thing with this one is it doesn't have a whole lot of value because you still have the random race day condition bonus that works on a bell curve applied afterward. So you could still end up with a negative race day even if you use this willpower one. So it's a little bit tricky in how that works, a little bit deceiving in how that works. But it doesn't hurt to have it. And it certainly can make 1 day worth of racing, or in this case 2, 4, or 6 days worth of racing, better. More advantageous. You really need an objective, you really want an objective, you really want to win this race, you're in second place, and then all of a sudden you're going into the last day of the race and it's a big climb and you're a climber and you have an expected race day condition of a -3 and you're like, oh man, I need this race so bad. Well, there you go. Use that, flip that around, you go into it, suddenly you got a +2, your main competitor who's in first has that -2, and you win the race. So willpower, it's not the most important of these performance ones, but it could have a big impact a couple times a year for each level. The 2 that matter a lot, other than the attentiveness, if that's your thing, if that extra XP is your thing. The other 2 that you could possibly go for before those, or if you don't bother with attentiveness, the 2 that you'll probably want to go for first are either training or fitness peak. And this one comes down entirely to you on which one you see to have the higher value. Training, well, this allows you to better manage tiredness, results from a hard preparation. Now, I told you to take very high preparation. That's already a hard preparation, and every week you're going to train hard or take a break, right? If you were listening, you would have. But as a result, you could produce more consistent performances across the season. Ultimately, what training comes down to is you build up tiredness less quickly when you're training hard. When your training's above 90%, you don't get tired as fast. You should have your training above 90% all season long. And you want to avoid fatigue. And it's going to be easier to keep a high level of fitness when you don't have fatigue and when you have these training levels. So these 3 training levels, the first one and the third one especially, are going to have the most impact. But that first level of training, if you can grab that early on in your season as your, 4th or 1st level, it's going to make keeping a high level of fitness so much easier, and keeping the fatigue away so much easier. So high value to this training. And then with the final one, you can kind of select, it's just much greater reduced. And you get more of a bonus when you take a break, meaning it's going to drop the fatigue level more so than normal. So that first level and that third level have the biggest impact. So if you're going to get to level 2, make sure you get to level 3 right away. But level 1, very, very important. Level 3, very important. Finally, fitness peak. This one's simple. That fitness peak that you only get 3 times an entire season, it lasts for between 12 and 18 days. Level 1 pushes that out to 18 to 22 days. Level 2 pushes that out to 22 to 26 days. And level 3 pushes it out to the maximum, exactly 28 days. That's almost a month. If it's February, that is a month. Also, you can trigger it manually as soon as the bar goes above 90 points, meaning you don't have to wait for it to hit 100 necessarily. You could push it at 90 or 92 or 94, but it's still going to trigger at 100 regardless. And if you remember the earlier part of the tutorial about fitness peak, you're going to hit it 11 days early if you're on Grand Champion. If you race for just 9 days, you're going to hit it 2 weeks early. This helps make it last longer, which helps counter that issue with it triggering early. But the easiest thing to do, push the objective back by a couple weeks from what the actual objective that you would like to have, the actual fitness peak. If you want the Tour de France and it starts at the beginning of July, pick an objective that's in the middle of July, and then it'll trigger at the beginning of the tour. But if you're on level 1, well, it's not going to make it to the end of the race because that's 23 days long. 21 stages, 2 rest days. It's only going to last 12 to 18 days. Level 1 is going to push it out to 18 to 22, and that's going to cover most of the tour. Level 2, well, there you go. There's the entire tour. 22 to 26 days. That's good. That's really good. That would keep you up there. And with level 3, 28 days, guaranteed. You're going to make the whole thing in its entirety. But still, if you hit it a couple weeks early, and you set the Tour de France anyway, and you only raced 9 days, but that's 2 weeks early, well, 2 weeks early means you're actually only going to get your fitness peak for 14 days of the tour. Which means you're going to miss the whole last 9 days of the tour, which generally is a lot of climbing. And if you're a stage racing specialist, your fitness peak will collapse end early, and you're going to struggle late in the race. And check out my PCM 2018 Pro Cyclist mode to see what happens when your fitness peak ends early at the Tour de France. It's not pretty. It is not pretty. So, scoot that objective back. Scoot it back a week, 2 weeks, 3 at most. But generally, 2 weeks. It's a good target, good range. So, fitness peak, very valuable. It's only 3 times a year, but you can stretch it by weeks and get that increased race day condition, which is going to make you a stronger, better rider for longer periods of time. That's quite a few stages that's going to affect you if you have it set up at the right time. If you understand the math on the training and the race days and can get it to trigger at the right time. With the extra length, it can have a really, really high value. As will the first and third level of training, as could the XP each month if you take it early on in attentiveness, if that's what you want. Those 3 areas, generally the first ones you want to go for. Maybe the first level of network, and then maybe into those race bonuses, the super leader, the stealth, the technique, the discovery, the willpower. Everything has value at some point. It's up to you on what you take and when you take it. Last thing we're going to look at is that contract. I've got to push forward to the 1st of April to get there, but we'll keep that one really brief. And actually, maybe I'll just show you a cut of my last playthrough. Come April 1st, you're going to start getting the option to look at your future contract for next season. This contract comes from a number of teams that have interest in you, and you're not going to find that out until you hit April 1st. But once that list is established, that list is going to stay the same until the end of that contract period signing. The values is what's going to change. And here, it's just the interest value. The other ones, the number of points that they're willing to give you, that's not going to change. That's going to stay the same. So if you take a team that only offers you 15 points per season, well, that's what you're going to get for that contract. That's not going to change in May, June, July. That part stays the same. So what you need to do, what I recommend that you do here, is go through the teams, look at whether you want to be in Continental Pro, or if a World Tour team comes along and you're ready to make that jump, figure out what division you would like to be a part of in the next season. Where do you think you'll be at? Whether you want to go back to being a domestique, whether you want to stay a leader, whether you want to dominate at that level, or whether you want to move on to that next level and dominate there. You've got to know where you fit in, where you have value, where your play style would be best served at. Look through the teams, and ultimately April 1st is the time to select your team. Because if you select the team you want to be a part of April 1st, you have a contact value. And every month that contact value is going to give you one to apply unless you've used the network skill to increase that amount. And then it would give you more. Now, if you have applied network skill points, then this part's pretty easy because you can strongly influence a team. If you haven't, you only get one each month. Give it to the same team every month, and regardless of what you do that season, that team's going to find you more favorable in the end and likely offer you a contract. Without any network levels, it might be a little bit harder. You might need a few results to help boost that profile. But ultimately, you can sign with who you sign with. So first of every month, apply that point ultimately to the same team that you've already decided you want to ride for that next season. Save that and do that month after month. Every once in a while, you'll see an evolution of that if you get some results, and it'll grow and change, and then hopefully, in the end, they will offer you a decent enough contract that'll make you happy, and you move on to that new team for the next season. Or on that list should be the team you already ride with now, and they will hopefully, if you want to stay there, offer you a contract as well. But that's it for this Pro Cyclist Mode overview, this tutorial on Pro Cyclist Mode. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments box. And I don't plan on doing a second Pro Cyclist Mode. I am going to have 2 tutorials for the career mode, as there's a lot going on early season and late season with that one. I think I've just about got everything covered in regards to Pro Cyclist Mode. But again, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment, and I will be happy to address those, or the community as well can step up to help out with any questions you may have. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out my Pro Cycling Manager playthroughs. I have a career mode of 2019, a 2018 that's still active. I have 2 Pro Cyclist Mode series, one as a stage racer and one as a cobbled classics rider. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.